Hello and welcome to Sound Like, where today we're going to be looking at microcuts. A brief overview of this song, that it is very simplistic. A lot of the sounds that you'll need for this will apply to a great many Muse songs or kind of across their catalogue. If you have some of the pedals that I have kind of talked about before in previous Sound Likes, you're in luck. You can easily achieve the Sound Like for this song. As always, we're going to look at Pedalcam, go through the song from verse, chorus, the kind of riff stuff right through to the very end. But before we jump into the video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for Muse covers and sound likes and a few other videos as well. And with that in mind, let's jump into Pedalcam. Okay, so for Pedalcam for microcuts, it's very straightforward. There are 4 sounds that I use. It goes from patch 1, which is the blues driver and some delay. Very simple overlook of that is just a... You'll also be able to hear that there is some modulation in there from the phase 90, so altogether that kind of creates that nice kind of moody atmospheric tone that I like. It really kind of blends in well for the verse. For the chorus, it's just the overdrive distortion, as you can see here. Number 2 is the overdrive distortion, and that sounds like this. Pretty simple. And then number 3 is just what I have programmed in here is just the fuzz factoring. Now this is for the kind of break between the second chorus and kind of the descending riff. That's just in there for the kind of the crazy noise, but in my kind of recent cover of microcuts, I do use the chaos pad. We can look into that specifically later on, but for this particular setting, it's just for those kind of crazy fuzz factory tones, not so much kind of the actual pedal itself to play through like a... It's just for those crazy noises. And finally, is on number 4 is just the big muff for the descending riff. But that's Pedalcam in its entirety. Now let's break down the song and check out each sound. Okay, so for the verse of microcuts, this is where it all starts. As we've seen on Pedalcam, I'm using my blues pedal with some delay and some very subtle modulation in there, and it will sound like this. There are a few ways you can kind of cue up the sound for this. You can rely more on a kind of a cleaner tone and kind of leaning more on the kind of delay to kind of fill out those sounds. Now without the blues pedal, it will sound a lot cleaner, a lot tidier. Arguably that would, work just as well, but I kind of go for a little bit of a middle ground between what the sort of sound that's on the record. It's definitely got some bite and it's definitely got some attack kind of going on in there. Quite a large amount, and I don't like to kind of take it to that extreme because I like to have that kind of dynamic range and contrast between what's going on in the chorus. So I take my blues pedal, turn it the gain all the way down. And that's just my own preference. You can do it however you want, but that's the sort of thing that I would suggest. You don't have a totally clean sound because it's quite boring and is a bit too heavily contrasted against what's going on in the chorus. So you have this very low crunch from the blues pedal to give it some sort of presence, but it's not trying to compete with what's coming on in the chorus. So it's a bit of a kind of a very much a mirror image of kind of what's kind of going on there. So I like the sound that I get. In terms of the delay, it's entirely your decision about how many repeats and how loud the return level is. I like to take it to a bit of an extreme to have the level quite fairly high up. As we've seen on Pedalcam, the level is about at 2 o'clock, so it's kind of definitely in there. There's nothing subtle about it, and the feedback is around 12, so there's quite a lot of repeats going on in there. That kind of kind of incorporated in with what's going on with the rest of the song in terms of the vocals and the bass and the drums, it really does sit in quite nicely, and I really enjoy it. It's a really good tone for kind of what's kind of going on in the album, kind of generally as well. So I really enjoy that sound. So with all that explanation out of the way, that's generally kind of the verse, both of the verses for microcuts. In terms of the finer detail, for the picking, your hand should be rested pretty much against the bridge to kind of keep it anchored and to kind of help make sure that there's not too much energy going into your picking. It should be a very light rhythm that you're going for in there. There should be no kind of aggressive attack in there, again, because that's what the chorus is about. There's this kind of good comparison between what's going on in the verse and the chorus. So kind of being a lot more restrained in the verse really kind of helps make the chorus jump out a lot bigger. So with that in mind, now let's check out the chorus. So now for the chorus, now as we said kind of in the verse, this is the kind of the contrasted bit. This is where you want your sound to go from kind of nothing to 11. In terms of the kind of the controls and the sound that's on my overdrive distortion, which is what we're using, it's leaning a little bit more towards the overdrive side of things. I prefer it to like this, to have it more of a, it's kind of like a lot of mid-frequency content have the kind of boxier tone. There is of course a great argument to have it more of a distortion side, a bit more kind of pinpoint, but I like to have that kind of openness of an overdrive for this. But because of it's a blend, there is still some distortion sound in there, but the overdrive is a bit more predominant in there. But it's entirely your decision where you take it. This is just a personal preference of mine. It does kind of flip, but at the moment I'm liking the overdrive sound of things. So with that in mind, the chorus should sound like this. So it's just aggressive the whole way through. If you want to look at what's kind of going on with the live sound, there's a lot of palm muting going on in there. Distortion could be the same level, you just palm muting the whole time. Makes it a little bit difficult to kind of get the aggressiveness out in there, but if you really kind of bear with it, you'll get a performance out of it. So it's a more of a... So there are two ways of playing the chorus. I prefer the kind of the more open approach because it's a lot more aggressive and it really just takes it to that next level straight away. On the flip side of that, there is an argument to say have the palm muting in there, but you kind of slowly release it as the kind of the song goes on. It's entirely up to you how you do it. That's an interesting way to do it, to have a more of a... Definitely makes sense to have it at that kind of halfway point during the chorus to kind of really have it opened up. But the thing to keep in mind is that the aggressiveness needs to, through your picking arm, strumming arm, needs to kind of be in there, and a kind of a good solid distortion to play with. And so before the chorus, there is of course the just the kind of the chucker that's kind of going on in the album, which is just a... You can just do it like that if you want. With my recent cover, you can probably see that I prefer to do the behind the nut scratches, particularly for the second chorus. It's just an opportunity, a little one, just to kind of have just a weird kind of noise in there to bring it in, and to go with a harmonic or something like that kind of really helps kind of prepare or kind of have something just to really kind of a landmark kind of sound to help bring in the chorus even more. So it could be simple as just... Another one that I like to do is just to have a kind of a natural harmonic from any of the strings on any of the frets that just sound quite good. Now there's loads of candidates for this. It could be a... or kind of a bit more of a softer one. entirely your decision. It's just an idea that I have that you might want to try for when you're trying to play microcuts. So that's that in its entirety. You kind of really see that compared to a lot of the songs that we've looked at in sound likes already, particularly with the last one we did, Newborn, where it's kind of really challenging you to think about your playing and so on. Microcuts is a lot more simplified and a lot more easier to just play. It's a lot more straightforward because it's a lot more about the aggression and the kind of the strength of your playing. The chords themselves are not that challenging. They're a bit interesting and a bit fiddly when you get toward the higher end of the neck for the chorus, but on the grand scheme of things, it's a very, very straightforward song. With that in mind, let's get into the kind of the ambiguousness of the kind of the Fuzz Factory bit of the song. Okay, so now for this section with the verses and all the choruses done, it's now that kind of like ambiguous, weird sound part. We're going to look at some Fuzz Factory stuff and the kind of what I'm doing with the Chaos Pad. But don't worry, if you don't have these tools at your disposal, like a Chaos Pad or a Fuzz Factory pedal, there are still things that you can do. So for example, you can get a lot of feedback from your amp if that's a possibility. Now I don't have that because I do all complete amp simulation, but the way I get around that would be to use my sustainer circuit, which is pretty straightforward and kind of explains itself. So you just turn it on, get some high pitched squeals out of that, and then come out of it. Another thing that you can do is just to do some crazy stuff just by sliding the pick up and down the strings. Just think of it as, for this section, it's just a blank canvas to put in a weird tone, a weird sound. So you can use some whammy stuff in there, or if you've got a delay, you can kind of really pull back on the delay time but really ramp up the feedback so you get that kind of big wall of sound in there. Just think of little things like that you can kind of do to kind of get the kind of sound that you want, or an interesting sound that you want. Each time you try it, it will be different and it'll be unique every single time. So it's a great opportunity for just kind of throwing yourself in there. But for now, I'm going to show you a few things that I do like to do. So it'll be some Chaos Pad stuff and some Fuzz Factory stuff, and maybe with some kind of sustainer things in there as well. So let us look at that. So I hope that last bit that we've just seen with all the kind of like the weird noises kind of helped give you an idea about what you can do in terms of your approach. They're a little out there, and some of it was a bit difficult to show with holding a camera in one hand and trying to do the other bits with another hand, especially with the Fuzz Factory. Hopefully it's given you the idea that if you may not have a Chaos Pad or a Fuzz Factory, that the other things that I've shown you, that you can still approach that kind of strange noise without having to just stand there without playing anything. There's still a lot you can do. But now we're going to come after that and we're going to just do the descending riff. For this whole thing, I just use the big muff kind of the vast majority of the time. Sometimes I might switch back over to the overdrive distortion if I want something a bit more less muffled, which what the big muff provides, and I want something a bit more pinpoint and direct. But lately I do kind of prefer to use the big muff for the whole thing to keep that kind of level of kind of thickness and that kind of fat recognizable tone from a big muff kind of in there the whole time. So the whole thing should sound a little like this. Keeping that same level of of distortion from the big muff in there the whole time, keeps that energy up, it keeps that same feel. If you are going to switch between two effects at that point, I would suggest it's done at the break where it's just the guitar, the drums and the bass are kind of pulled out for a second to help kind of bring the focus to that, and so that's a bit more streamlined, that section. But it's not necessary. It's just something that I would suggest and that you try if you want to, but just have a big distortion for that part, that's all I would say. And that's kind of pretty much it. It's there's not much scope in that riff to kind of really kind of get a lot of arm action or wrist action going on. It makes a lot more sense, and it makes it a lot easier to play if you could just largely plant your hand on the bridge and just kind of run through the riff, so you're kind of really focusing on the kind of nimbleness and the accuracy of your fingers at this point, and also making sure to keep the strings that you don't need to play muted so that it sounds as clear as you possibly can. That's just a little bit of advice there. As I've said with this song so far in the previous sections, it's a very easy song, it's a simplistic song. It really just relies on more of kind of just the raw power and the kind of the fast pacedness of it. There's no complex parts to it, and that's very much reinforced by that you can just have pretty generalized tones for this section. The verse is just a bit of a light distortion, a very light distortion with some delay and some modulation. Chorus is just a fat distortion, and then the outro riff is just a big muff. It's really simple. There's no kind of need to kind of overthink it and overcomplicate your sound for this. So to have that coupled with a really kind of easy song to play really makes it a lot easier for you to just dive in and just kind of like play around with it a bit. Like I said before, with some songs that we've looked at, they may kind of try and teach you some techniques and so on, but microcuts on a audio level, not kind of a technical level, is kind of an easy one to just kind of get your teeth sunk into, to kind of really start off with if you want to look at some Muse songs that you might want to play around with. So it's a great song for that. And now that we've covered the whole thing from the very beginning to the very end, now let's just go to the outro and maybe a new background. I don't know. Maybe something a bit nicer than this. Who knows? So that was Sound Like Microcuts in its entirety from the beginning right through to the end. I hope you enjoyed that one and hope it was very informative. As I said throughout the video, it's quite a simplistic song in terms of both in your playing and also in terms of the sounds that you're kind of going for. There's kind of no ambiguity about them, it's just very much a light crunch with some distortion for a chorus and then a big muff kind of delay sort of sound. There's nothing kind of too difficult about it, and those sounds are pretty generalistic and they work very well for a lot of Muse songs. So think of microcuts as a kind of like stock Muse song in terms of how your guitar will sound like it. A lot of the sounds for this song will work on a lot of other ones, if not the vast majority, especially with all the things from back in the day around Origin and Symmetry particularly. But that was Microcuts in its entirety. Again, I hope you enjoyed that one, and let me know what you thought down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!